You mentioned Palace briefly. What's the origin story of you getting on that brand?
That's less interesting, but I'll tell you. At the time, so I went to school, secondary school, after that school with the high jump. I went to secondary school just over the river from South Bank. And so I was always at South Bank. I would take the train up from where my mum lived to the train to Waterloo, but I was supposed to get off at Vauxhall and take the 87 bus. But I would just let the time tick on and watch the doors close and carry on to Waterloo and go skating at South Bank in my school uniform instead at 8:30 in the morning until, well, an indefinite period of time. So I was skating South Bank every day. And at that time, Rory was also skating South Bank every day. Karim, Chewy saw my skating, and Chewy and Rory, I think, really were the kind of instigators. And they said, you should give this kid some boards and see what happens. And so once I received a message from Lev saying he'd given me some boards and some T-shirts. He'd left them behind the counter at Slam for me. And I went and got them immediately. It was a double extra large Palace Chanel, the Chanel T-shirt. That's how long ago this was. It was that first or second run of Palace T-shirts. It was Chanel and Versace. It was kind of the beginning of that big fashion house logo knockoff thing. And I would argue that they did it best. And I loved that T-shirt, but it was like a nightie on me. Do you know what that is? In English, that's like a
gown,
a dress that an old lady sleeps in. A gown. It was a gown. And the boards were 8.5. It was definitely just whatever happened to be by the door that he was running out of at the time. But I was over the moon about it because, I didn't see it coming at all. And it meant the world to me. And that, perhaps not as anecdotal a story as the South Bank demo with Adidas, but certainly meant a lot to me.
That's wicked, man. Take what you can get in the early days.
And it was a huge privilege for me to grow up in tandem with that company. I was maturing and that company was maturing, and ultimately we matured in different directions. I was honored to be there for that ride, to be so present in that time where it was just going from strength to strength. There was a boom in skateboarding, and Palace capitalized on that like no one else. Despite not being the best skater, despite not having my personal life in any order whatsoever, I was at the forefront of the videos, and I was certainly in almost all of the pictures for a long time. It was me and Lucian. After I left, I noticed that they made more of an effort to diversify it and depend upon 10 different people. And now they shoot all the skaters and a number of other people as well. But for a very long time, and I suppose this is not unrelated to the Adidas connection, it was just me in everything. And that was and I would argue that was the most interesting time to be in.
So fast forward a bit, you're on Palace with Chewy and all that, and then eventually decide to part ways. What was the reason behind that move?
I did my company, Thames. I've done it since I was about 15 as well. It was actually my art project in school. Nice. And then Palace became my business partners in that. Again, when I was very young, still a teenager. And I just didn't really, at first, I was expected just to supply the designs and let them handle everything. And when I was 16 or 17, that was exactly the arrangement that I wanted. But as I got a little bit older, that very involvement or lack thereof became a problem for me. I wasn't especially proud to put my name to the product or, much of it on the whole. And that was certainly a catalyst, a factor. But the real reason why we split up was because we have very different ideas on how much input a skateboarder should have on their own skateboarding. I know this matters to varying degrees to different people. Some people, like Chewy, for instance, is very happy to completely put himself in the hands of Lev, in this case, and choose a song for them and choose the version of the trick and so on. With me, not so much. I remember really doing my very best to get multiple versions from multiple angles of tricks. And I thought that I would at least be able to see those tricks. But, I didn't want to really direct it to anywhere near the degree that I'm kind of fastidiously controlling now of my own company now. It was not, I don't believe that I was overbearing or wishing to be overbearingly involved. But there was a clear contrast there. I remember one conversation with Brady, who was the team manager at the time. He was just baffled that I would want to. And he said, but it's Lev's video. And I just realized that I just felt very differently about that. Of course, Lev is a mastermind video editor. Brilliant, a great artist as far as filmmaking is concerned. And there was never really actually any incidents. There's no particular incident where I'm gutted that he used that and not that. But it was more the principle of it. Seemingly, it was just not to be questioned that you would just do, you would do the sweating and get it done. And then you just see if it were used at all, if it were used to this song, if it were, and just something fundamentally seemed very wrong to me about that. So that's, in a nutshell, it's that. We had different ideas of how essentially my physical labor should be presented. That combined with the not really being totally sure that the Thames company was being run the right way. I mean, they weren't very transparent with me about that either. Not only, it was not just that they wouldn't show me tricks. They wouldn't really show me the accounts for the company, which I technically owned 50% of. Now, I know you could argue that the accounts, there wouldn't have been anything particularly significant. It wouldn't be a case of anyone's cheating me out of any significant amount of money. Mm-hmm. But I just wanted to be able to see them. I felt like I continued to be treated as a child when all I really was trying to do was, get an understanding of what the business which I started was doing. But, they sort of acted like I was hassling them to, ringing them up, asking them to read me a bedtime story or something. I don't think that I maintain that nothing I ever asked for was objectively too much. And also, when you're 15 or 16 and you start skating for someone and you're not close with your dad and you don't have otherwise at home a role model or a father figure, and suddenly you're around all of these 30-something-year-old men, you totally believe that they have your best interests at heart because you want to believe that. Even if they didn't necessarily say that, you want to believe that there's a trust there, that there's a mutual looking out for each other there. And you're a little bit heartbroken. When you find that that's not exactly the case. Mm-hmm. When you find that they're kind of writing something, sneak dissing, I think is the technical term, slipping into product descriptions or captions in magazines, something which is quite clearly aimed at you. It's distressing. It was emotionally distressing. And I think, just as we're talking about it, and I've never really talked about this, but as we're here now, I think that they knew that my entire social life was Palace Skateboards.
Mm-hmm.
The PWBC skate gang was my gang, and they were my friends. They were all of my friends. I didn't have friends outside of that. And I do believe that they thought that there was some margin for disrespect because I wouldn't leave, because I wouldn't cut myself off from what at the time admittedly felt like London. And I think that they exploited that to some degree. I think that they didn't take my unhappiness seriously or feel any sense of urgency to reassure me, because I think they thought, well, you're not going to stop going on trips all the time with your best friends. And ultimately I did choose to do that. And it was a little bit rough for a while, but I have stayed friends with those people. I see a lot less of them, but that's life anyway. You grow up, you go in different directions. And to be honest, even at the time, even though Lucian and I lived together and Rory and I lived together, we only saw each other on trips anyway. It's life. You stop being in these constructed situations where you're together, and you realize that you just don't really arrange to meet up quite so much. But it doesn't mean anything. I'm still friends with them. When I do see any of them, we slip straight back into it, despite how much has changed in our lives. Sobriety was another big reason why I stopped being so close with a lot of those people. Again, not a pinpointable falling out, but you just realize that you're in the same room a lot less. If the room is a warehouse in Clapton at 5 a.m, you're not going to be there sober. It's just, you drift.
For sure.
I've said a lot. I don't know if any of that answers your question.
That answers all the questions.
Honestly, that was amazing. Amazing answer.
From the outside looking in and seeing Palace at like almost the height of its powers, and it's grown into this huge thing, to see such a young kid leave, it was shocking to like the skate world. It was like everybody had questions of why now? Like Palace, what more could you want from a brand to be on? Like popularity. It seemed like they were only putting on your friends. Like it seemed so London. It was a drastic change.
I don't think anyone had left before that. I'm not sure if anyone has left since. It is, it's there are worse places to be, believe me. But it wasn't, my grandfather also died. Keep it light, mate.
No, sorry,
my grandfather also died at around the time of them opening up the shop in Japan. Very soon after the death, they said, "You're still coming on the trip though, right?" As in missing my grandfather's funeral to go and sort of stand around in a shop in Japan where my presence was not really required. We wouldn't have been doing much. And that upset me so much, that suggestion. I asked myself what he would do or what he would tell me to do. And it was leave. It was take a bit of a chance and just see what else there was. And there was certainly no plan. I didn't have another board sponsor I wanted to go to. I'd shut down Thames because I didn't like it with them. I didn't enjoy Thames as a business. And I didn't plan on relaunching it. It wasn't very long before I realized that I really missed it and did relaunch it. But I had no plan. I just wanted to get out of that. I'm glad that I fell out with them then, or left the company then, for what to me were very real, solid reasons. Because if I'd hung around, it wouldn't have been very long before I had left, because I simply didn't resonate with the output anymore. It looks to me almost as though someone has bought it and is following some kind of brand Bible, how to run it, keep using these slang euphemism and phrases, keep using this music. That's my honest opinion on that company and its output.
Fair enough.
We're not even in the rapid fire round.
Yeah.
yet. The night is young.